4 minutes until showtime. 3 minutes until showtime. 2 minutes until showtime. 1 minute until showtime. 'Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Election 2024 is over. America has voted, and both sexism and racism have won the day. On Liberal Dan Radio, we will hold everyone accountable, from the media that failed to report the threat that Trump poses to this nation, to the people who supported him. We will pick up the mantle to educate the people about his actions, from being dictator on day one, pardoning January 6th domestic terrorists, implementing Project 2025, and any other draconian measures he tries to pass. And now, the resistance begins. back to Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left, that's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm not giving out the Blog Talk Radio number right now, because in a minute we're going to have a guest. Maybe if we do call-ins afterwards, we can do that, but as of right now, if you want to leave your comments and thoughts, just go to the chat room at liberaldanradio.com or twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, just come on over to YouTube now, since Blog Talk Radio is going the way of the dodo. Unfortunately, Donald Trump, the dodo, didn't go the way of the dodo. But, you know, it is what it is. Wait, I'm sorry. I stole his line.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. Anyway, support the show, like the like the video, subscribe to the channel, share links to other videos, this video, etc. with your friends. Interact with other people on posts, get the algorithm up, because, you know, as I say, Al Gore needs more rhythm. You can gift memberships here, become a Liberal Danimal or higher. You can get Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to the Twitch channel for free. Otherwise, this is the normal cost. You can do bits as well over there. You can Venmo Liberal Dan, or you can buy me a cider. Go to liberaldan.com/ liberaldan.com and click the Buy Me Cider button. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. Or just go to buymeacoffee.com/liberaldanradio. Or if you can support the show monthly, become a Patreon. Patreon.com/liberaldan or patreon.liberaldan.com. Either way will get you there. If you come on the show or watch me on Tuesdays when I do my Nerdy Dan stream, recently I've had one of my friends joining over, and we've gamed together. We've had lots of discussions, some political, some not. We do get into political stuff whilst playing games. And Ari did want to come on the show today, and I was like, we have great conversations over there. Why not have great conversations over here too? So without further ado, here is my friend, and hopefully yours too, Ari Gabrek. How are you today, Ari?
I am doing well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. So basically, I've listed just the title of the episode as Housing Issues and Trans Advocacy with Ari Gabrek. So first, give a little introduction about yourself, and I guess we can just start talking about the topics that, you know, you want to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. So I am a expat of Louisiana. I was not born, but I was bred in Louisiana. I'm now currently living in Pennsylvania. um, in and around Southwest Pennsylvania. I do advocacy work for my trans community as well as unhoused individuals. And currently, my focus is advocacy for the rights of LGBTQ plus, as well as trans and disabled individuals in homeless shelters and different advocacy points for unsheltered individuals here in the United States.
Now, what issues are you seeing with the with issues with people who are LGBTQA plus, who are unhoused, who are trying to get housing or trying to get places, you know, to shelter or whatever? What issues do you see with that perhaps other people might not realize, or other people might not just understand?
So, as a thing that actually ends up happening every year, we end up going out in the community to be able to do this thing called the point in time count. And the point in time count ends up gathering everybody who is unsheltered, in shelters, or in transitional housing here in Pennsylvania. And in the region that I'm in, of the 5,525 individuals inside of shelters or unsheltered, the percentage of it for the people who were queer was actually quite high. Um, it's actually statistically a higher percentage than the actual population of LGBT folks here in the state of Pennsylvania, which holds because nationwide it's actually been shown that LGBT folks are more likely, especially trans folks, to be unhoused in the United States than anywhere else. And not just unhoused, but unsheltered. There are not very many shelters that end up being very friendly towards the trans community. And unfortunately, as a person of lived experience, I have experienced quite a few amounts of discrimination within the shelter system when I was going through some issues myself. Um, um, that Red Bucket Brigade being one of them.
Yeah. We no longer give to the Red Bucket Brigade on, in this household just because of several issues, but that being one of it. Do you find that a lot of the issues, or the majority of the issues, with individuals trying to seek shelter who are unhoused, do you find that to be because a lot of these shelters are so-called faith-based shelters?
A good chunk of them are, especially in rural areas. The larger cities tend to actually have a lot more non-faith-based stuff, but it's still staffed by individuals who may not be affirming of LGBTQ identities. And in particular, like in the rural areas where there are not a lot of resources, yeah, those ones are predominantly faith-based. Um, and those ones tend to not be part of something called the continuum of care. Some of them are, but a minority of them are. The continuum of care actually ends up providing some safeguards for people and individuals within shelter settings by setting standards for those shelters to be able to say, well, you can't discriminate based on X, Y, and Z. Or in this case, if you want to be able to go and apply for our notice of funding opportunity and put in a RFP or request for program, you have to meet these criteria to be able to go and meet them. And so when they're not a part of the COC, for better or worse, they set their own ways of doing things. Like in my case, when I was having issues after I started to come out, when I was starting to socially and medically transition, um, there was a place that ended up putting me in the women's shelter.
Mm.
And then none of the women were comfortable around me because you can't see it very well, but I have like a mustache and a goatee that's starting to grow.
Right. I mean, yeah, that could be disconcerting, especially if you are, we went back when I was one of the things that my fraternity done, which was kind of, you know, people might be shocked to find out that my fraternity did service work. Some of the service work that we did was actually to help out in shelters, and one of them was a women's shelter. And we had to sign various things that we wouldn't disclose anything of what we saw, or anything like that. And even then, people coming in and volunteering to help versus people living. I mean, if you're a woman and you have issues with men, because of abuse or whatever, you're probably unlikely to want to be around anybody who's a guy. So, and I'm sure, at that point, transness doesn't matter at that point when it comes to uncomfortableness around guys in general, especially when you look like one, you have the goatee, you present like one. A lot of times that they just need to be separate, and that's understandable. But if the people running it, clearly don't understand that, then it's going to create problems for everybody involved.
Well, one of the places that I volunteered was actually an all genders shelter, and people had the ability to choose if they wanted to be in a dorm that was specifically just for women, but that categorization of women with that space was um, cisgender as well as transgender women. And
Mm,
affirming shelters do exist, but they're of the minority of spaces. Um, and the sad thing is that there are situations in which people within my community just don't want to go in because of the harassment that they end up having to go through. Um, um, there's always some questionable things within shelters,
mm,
and the ways and methods that we end up doing it are not affirming of the individual.
right.
um the thing that I've been pushing is this principle called housing first. And this is what always gets me, and this is the thing that I get slightly laughing at, because it started out as something by a Republican. Housing first principles is get them off the street, get them into housing, and you'll actually save money. And it's been proven time and again and again and again that it actually works. And it doesn't just work on a small scale, it works on a larger scale too.
I,
But
I think I've
housing
seen.
first
I
could
think I've
actually
seen recent.
alleviate.
Okay, I think I've seen recently. Was it Sweden or one of the kind of Norwegian type countries that did implement housing first, and it's had amazing results nationwide?
Finland,
Finland. Okay, close. I was close.
Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark.
Okay.
But of those ones, Finland is the most beneficial, has had the best return on investments. Um, their homelessness rate is 3%, whereas ours hovers around 13%.
Wow. And so when it comes to, you would say that they're disproportionate numbers comparatively to the like LGBTQA folks, queer folks.
Yeah.
There's,
Yep.
compared to society as a whole. And you also said, because of the issues with the shelters in and of themselves and how they treat, trans folk, LGBTQA folks. Is it
Mhm.
also fair to say that there may very well be a bigger discrepancy when it comes to the folks who are unhoused, who are unsheltered because of that fact?
Yeah, so unsheltered folks, over the last few years here in the Western Pennsylvania region have been having a huge issue. Like we literally during COVID ended up getting unsheltered homelessness to zero.
Mm-hmm.
Um for about a year and a half, that number of unsheltered homeless was there was nothing. Um and then within that time frame, it shot up to over 400 people because they were forced out of the spaces that were being used. The different counties and the 20 county region that I was in ended up um, going and finding ways of being able to do contracts with hotels to be able to get people off of the streets and get them connected to wraparound services such as healthcare and food and finding jobs, getting connected to education, dealing with mental health issues, having targeted case management, all of the things that are really needed within a community to be able to go and help to be able to alleviate or even possibly end homelessness. Um, and now it's getting and creeping up to, I believe, 500 over 500 individuals within the Western Pennsylvania region who are unsheltered. And I think that's actually underrepresenting it because we can't find all of them. We can't find some of the encampments. We don't know where
Mm-hmm.
they are because there's none of that trust with the people who are trying to do the point in time counts.
Right, and makes sense, I guess, to a point. Like you could find places to put people, and it would have been during COVID, might have been beneficial even to the places because nobody was really traveling, so you had
No.
lots of swaths of hotel rooms that were just left empty. So why not make use of that? And of course, once tourism starts back up, then you need the hotel rooms for the people who are the tourists, which means that you have to find somewhere else if you do find someplace else for the folks who are unhoused. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, we do have in this country a crap ton of property that buildings that could be used to house individuals, but are not, and because a lot of people for some reason just want to hold on and I guess create scarcity when it shouldn't exist, etc. So, is there any attempts in that way to try and kind of push in that direction, or in what other ways are they trying to find other alternative places for individuals to stay?
So right now there's a push for a variety of different ways of being able to address homelessness. And it's not a one size fits all because I'm of the mentality one size fits all does not work.
Mm.
It has to be adjustable to the areas that you're in. And so the conference that I went to, the National Alliance to End Homelessness, had some really interesting ways of being able to shift into even old ways of ways that we used to be able to do and have affordable housing. like community land trusts. Community land trusts are a great way to be able to go and um, get affordable housing back into an area, because that's just one piece of the puzzle. Another one is to be able to do more units for permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing helps people who have long-term mental health or comorbid substance use disorder issues, to be able to have them get into a housing space and then be able to really smartly use that to give them a springboard to be able to segue back into society eventually. Sometimes they stay there permanently, sometimes they don't. Um, Other ones, like I talked about with Housing First, um, that if it's pitched well and it's done well, saves states, counties, and parishes money. Um, I think they ended up finding out that the reduction in the use of entitlements, especially for people who ended up implementing Housing First, was huge. And then secondarily, when implemented with something like a universal basic income, or a basic income within that region, they found that to actually work even better. The reduction of the use of things like SNAP and Medicaid was like, I want to say 85%.
Mm.
85% of the individuals ended up not having to use that. And it wasn't a huge amount of money. It was actually relatively small. Even just doing something as small as $50 ended up having a huge reduction within, spending and costs within benefits, within governmental benefits.
Well, they do say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So, I mean, if you can spend the money up front to prevent people from being unhoused, then you're gonna spend less money over the long term. Unfortunately, too many
Mhm.
people don't think in the long term. I think New Orleans recently. Did you follow the recent elections in New Orleans? I know you're not here anymore, but they did pass. Was it 2% of New Orleans' operating budget is now slated to go specifically into affordable housing. So that
Yep.
is one thing that may very well help people here, at least in New Orleans, try, because we have a very large community of unhoused folks. And of course, whenever big things come to town, like Taylor Swift or the Super Bowl, that's the solution, unfortunately, especially now that we have Republican governors, just to sweep it under the rug and move them someplace else. So we don't see the quote problem.
Oh yeah, no. I used to live in the Lower Garden District, and when I've been back and forth to New Orleans for decades.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stay away for long. It's very difficult to.
Yeah, I can imagine. I
Um,
would probably, even if I left because it's Louisiana, I'd probably want to come back. I saw a shirt today when I was out getting the last minute stuff for food for tomorrow, and the person's shirt was like, "I'm not from Louisiana. I'm from New Orleans," and I'm like, "Yep."
yeah, my mom's side of the family has been in Louisiana for, I've lost count of the generations.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
Um,
my wife's. I mean, I'm the first in my family from here on my side, but on my wife's side, I mean, they go back ages. I mean, you can trace back. There's one of the actresses from Party of Five, Lacey Chabert, is a distant cousin of my wife. And what I've talked about on the show, how one of my wife's grandparents or great grandparents or somewhere up there saved WWL's, I think, broadcasting license and like paid for it himself. And if he wouldn't have done that, WWL wouldn't exist right now. While cleaning out my mother-in-law's house, I actually got a gigantic CBS microphone that I'll be putting behind me at some point when I change around my office situation up here. So there's tons of connections among my wife's family too with all that. It's crazy. But to get back to the point of the
yes.
unhoused, one of the things that in my researching stuff about folks who are unhoused even way back when was the fact there's a lot of times where you have Shelters may have rules that prevent people from coming in, or make people less likely
Hmm.
to come in. For example, you can't,
Yep.
let's say if you're living out on the street and you think you need a weapon to survive, you're trying to come into a shelter and get shelter for even short term or whatever, they're not going to let you in with the weapon, or
Yep.
also dealing with somebody, if you're have an addiction like to illegal substances, then that also is something you won't be able to bring to the shelter. So how do people deal with that when that arises, or how do we deal with that to help reduce the overall problem?
There is a new movement, especially within shelter spaces, that focuses on harm reduction. And what I've really been liking about that is that it ends up taking a person first approach and ends up being guided by the individual. There is a place that I really love, um, and that I have to give them their props. Um, they allow people to be able to do things on their own pace. And the
Mm-hmm.
really great thing about it is that um, that shelter, it's privately run. It's not a non-for-profit. They get all of their money through like fundraising and other means, and like actually like the work that they end up doing within the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they end up taking again, so one of the principles of housing first, the harm reduction model, and then secondarily a person first approach, is that you meet a person where they are at. And so you work with them on being able to get off of different substances. You work with them and getting and meeting where they're at, to being able to provide something like, if you need to, a safe injection site, and things like fentanyl testing strips and Narcan if they're on harder drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And, these harm reduction principles have been found again to work. Like, we ended up starting them, they got exported to Europe. Europe ran with them and has done a fantastic job, but then we've not kept pace with it. Um, I know in a portion of Amsterdam, there are things like safe injection sites for places and people so that they can end up being in the safety if they have issues. And they know that they're getting something that's clean, especially for things like needles, because like the larger thing that really needs to be addressed is that a lot of these things, especially like drugs, the issue comes from there's nothing to do, they're not working, they're not doing much of anything, and the only thing that's available is either being an alcoholic or getting onto drugs. And whether it's because they're already on it or because they're getting onto it while being homeless or being
Mm-hmm.
unhoused and unsheltered, that eh, addressing that on the front end is a necessity. And so I personally would love to be able to see more places end up going with that harm reduction model, with that, we're going to meet you where you're at and work with you. It doesn't mean to say that we're going to not hold you accountable. We're going to actually hold you more accountable because you've decided to be able to come here of your own volition.
Right. And I know, I
Yeah.
mean, it's been my experience that there are many people who are conservative, um, who just don't like, ideas of, clean needles or whatever, because they take the thing, well, if you give them needles, that's just saying it's okay to use drugs. When in reality, all you're doing is saying, we want you to have clean needles so you don't get diseases, you don't get other problems on top of the fact that you're already, dealing with addiction, issues of addiction.
Clean injection sites have been shown across the world to work.
Mm-hmm.
They decrease the amount of overdoses. They decrease the amount of preventable, like some of the different STIs, and some of the different illnesses that are done through IV drugs or through some risky behaviors. Like it's really been shown that those sorts of things actually really work. And it's not just presenting the spread of things like disease, it's preventing death,
Right.
which if an individual, if a person is important, if you want to be able to say that you believe that an individual is important, that every life is important, then that includes those lives of people who are affected by substance use disorders. That includes the person who is the sex worker. Their lives matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, obviously, I agree because I think I do
It's
believe
not.
in and support those things, and I do. Sex work is work. That's my official stance. That I have on on my
Yep.
podcast and beyond. But clearly, there are a lot of people who really don't give a rat's ass about evidence based
No.
whatever,
Anything.
they have it in their head. Oh, this bad, so we're not going to do it, and then it ends up hurting more people than it helps. Now, again,
Oh yeah.
addiction can be a problem. Obviously, as we've been talking about, have you had any experience with working with in your advocacy or whatever with like the Odyssey House down here and Ed Carlson who runs it?
I hadn't had any work with the Odyssey House. I had primarily done a lot of stuff with House of Tulip,
Okay.
House of Tulip and Hagar's house. And those are two really good places, but I have heard some really good things about Odyssey.
Yeah. I just he was one of the people that ran in the District 91 race in the very contentious, ridiculously so,
Yeah.
very safe blue district of District 91. And we had two of the three candidates on the show, and one of them was Ed. And he seemed to be a very great guy, knowledgeable guy, caring about all the important things, just not in the right race because he was basically an afterthought between the fighting between the two other candidates who are running. But hey, I mean, if it gave the Odyssey House and other types things more notoriety, then hey, I guess it might have been worth it after all, right?
I I I'm happy when somebody decides that they're going to like try to be able to do stuff to better the community.
Yeah.
Like we need more people who want to take action to be able to make the lives of other people better. Um, and yeah, I may not be all that enthused with electoral politics,
Right.
but whatever floats their boat.
Right. But yeah. So and
I'm
then
I'm that I'm that I'm that we've kid about this last time. I'm that leftist that ends up going far enough to the left that we get our pew pews back again.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah. I
Yes.
mean, even on my show, I think I'm leftist enough, but I don't necessarily. I just want reasonable, background checks and stuff like that. I want to prevent people who shouldn't have them from having them, not just taking them all away like the straw man is, you know.
Oh, I know the straw man, but I will say this is my one contention is that some of the things that people think are common sense aren't necessarily. Like I will rage on for days about red flag laws because they're
Hmm.
horrible.
Yeah, and there are problems with absolutely problems with red flag laws, especially with how you actually implement them. The idea in concept sounds good. In reality, it could potentially take a weapon away from somebody who's being abused, for example, and then that person doesn't have a way to defend themselves.
Do you remember the legislator here there in Louisiana that ended up trying to be able to get all firearms taken away from trans people through red
I
flag laws?
Oof, I don't remember that, but if I would have heard about that, I would have probably had a fat man rant about that because oi. Um,
Yeah, so he wanted to be able to use the red flag laws at the time to be able to say that all trans people are considered mentally ill and therefore had to have every firearm taken away from them.
wow. And
Yeah.
you're probably going to see something probably worse than that coming from the incoming administration because I think you had Roger Stone that was released where he wrote a letter to Trump and was basically like, we can support the Second Amendment while taking away weapons from, quote, enemies of the state. And if you can start naming people enemies of the state, and then where are you going to stop? That sounds very 1933-ish.
Um, Again, this is where I come from my trans advocacy.
Yeah.
Like one of the things, and to segue into that one ever so slightly, is one of the projects that I'm working on right now is there's a place that I contacted called Operation Blazing Sword.
Mm,
Um, if anybody has actually heard of Pink Pistols, they're a national LGBT Second Amendment rights group, and I love them. Both of them are great. And a personal friend of mine, her name is Piper Smith. She does a group called Armed Equality.
mm,
She is a married lesbian woman who promotes Second Amendment rights and tries to be able to do some really good like advocacy work for like the queer community. And in terms of stuff like Operation Blazing Sword has a list of people who are um affirming ranges and instructors who end up doing it for either reduced costs or free in some cases.
hmm,
And like right now I'm hoping to be able to do some fundraising, particularly to help my community, the trans community, and of course the queer community at large, be able to get permits to carry, concealed carry licenses, um before all of this kind of ends up hitting. Because like I'm hoping that at least some Democrats start to be able to learn that at least a portion of society, those of us who are the most marginalized, who end up having the largest issues, really need to be able to keep ourselves safe. And like having access to that, and having access to that more consistently and not necessarily as expensively, is going to be an important way of being able to protect the trans and the queer community.
right. And I do like I did look while you were talking. I did look up the Pink Pistols, and I do like their slogan: "Pick on someone your own caliber," and that's a pun I can get behind. So
My other ones with gays with guns don't get bashed.
yeah, that's on the Operation Blazing Sword, I think, or is that on also Pink Pistols?
That's also Pink Pistols.
Okay.
Um, the first time around that Trump ended up getting elected, I was part of a group called Make America Dinner Again.
Uh huh.
And one of the things that I ended up um, kind of talking about and advocating for was stuff through the Pink Pistols. I did volunteer for them for a good number of years. And I like them. They're a very good organization. I enjoy what they do. I enjoy the camaraderie that they end up having, and I love the fact that like we have a really good group of people. Like I ended up being introduced to them by a drag performer that I spent time with in college.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
great. That's amazing. And there's looking here, like Operation Blazing Sword started right after the Pulse nightclub attack in Orlando. And in let's
Yep.
say August 2016, it was registered a nonprofit with the state of Florida, granted 501c3 tax charitable deductible charity status by the IRS. So yeah. So and it's funny
Yep.
because I can only imagine, like, often you'll hear the right say an armed society is a polite society, or if you think that somebody might have a gun, you're not going to deal with them. And then I'm sure when the Pink Pistols or Operation Blazing Sword or whatever start advocating for marginalized and oppressed people to have their own weapons to self-defense, I'm sure the right is going to be like, well, not like that, because you had like organizations like the NRA, they're supposed, I've always said NRA is for gun sales, not gun rights, but they backed
I mean, you're
the
right.
attempts.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're right.
they backed the ban on guns that was proposed by Reagan in California way back in the day, because they weren't
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't taking away from white people. It was taking the guns out of the hands of Black Panthers,
Black
you know
Panthers.
who they view as the enemy, mostly because of the blackness, not the pantherness. But Like it's why a lot of conservatives often don't have problems with stop and frisk laws, because who's getting stopped and frisked? Is it the average white Joe walking down the street? No, it's black and brown people, and they don't have a problem taking away
Yep.
guns from black and brown people. They have a problem taking they, but once you start taking away from white folks, that's then the issue, or white, I guess
Well,
cisgendered straight white folks, I should say.
well, this is the interesting portion because like all of the stuff that the Black Panthers ended up doing in California during that time, like the free breakfast and lunch programs
Right,
for kids, and not just the political stuff, but also the community building things, and getting Black communities to have that connection to be able to embrace rather than just acceptance, but abolitionism.
right,
um Having that radicalness of being able to know that, yeah, if a person ends up saying an armed society is a polite society, they want to be part of that society too.
mm,
um but yeah, it's always interesting. I'm gonna wait and see to see what's gonna end up happening, particularly with firearms stuff, especially for minority communities with this coming
mm,
up, because I'm not looking forward to it. I'm really not looking forward to it.
right,
Um, um, but yeah, the second amount of advocacy that I'm focusing in on right now is Pennsylvania, at least for the time being, is not quite at the level of a sanctuary state, but there are several cities that have ended up offering, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh being two of them. I haven't heard much on Harrisburg, but shelter is going to become very important in I think, these next few years.
mm,
And in particular, like, I know not everybody's going to be able to do this thing and to be able to move, but like finding a way of being able to get people to safe spaces. Because right now there's enough states that are saying they'll protect trans individuals and LGBT individuals, but I think that's just going to be kind of the tip of the iceberg.
right,
Um, I think in particular, like looking at specific things that need to be done, like what's going to affect my community and my trans community is going to affect a lot more.
right.
Um, and advocacy for my group is not just because it's my group of people, but it's because it's going to affect the majority of the rest of the minorities here in the United States.
Well,
Um,
it's the
but
poem.
housing,
First they came for the Jews or whatever. Now first they came for the trans folk, and I wasn't trans, so they didn't speak up. Then they came for the undocumented migrants and yada yada yada. So it may seem cliche, but I mean, we're
there's a
seeing
reason
threats.
that guy
Yes,
created it. Yeah,
yes,
there's a
there's a
reason that
reason,
guy created that
right? And as two fellow Jewish
because
people, we know it the best, right?
I meant, how many identity markers do I have to be able to rattle off here now?
Right, exactly.
Uh, Queer, trans, disabled, and Jewish.
Right. It's the I would say trifecta, but it's more than a trifecta. Is that a quadrifecta? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to be able to also do something, I'm also hard of hearing, but
Mm,
that's two disabilities.
true.
Um, one's a mobility disability, like I'm in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, talking about wheelchairs, and this is my brain, because my brain has decided that it needs to hop in different locations. So congratulations,
Yes.
um, um, ADDDJ.
Yeah.
Um, um, Another issue that I didn't go over, especially with shelters, was disabilities. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of places are not ADA compliant. They're not even the basics of ADA compliant.
Right.
Um, and it really sucks. Like, it really sucks for people who have mobility disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the space that I was talking about, the one where they stuff me with women, that I am
Right.
clearly not a woman,
Right.
um, had no shower chairs. It had no the grade on the front to be able to get in was actually too steep for me to be able to take on my own. Um, and I wasn't the only person that ended up having these larger issues.
Mm-hmm.
And um they couldn't keep me there because like, oh, the other thing that doesn't get also talked about is that a lot of these places end up having requirements, and those secondary requirements are very much in the religious vein.
Mm-hmm.
um One of the things that I they tried to be able to force me to be able to do was because they were clean and slow sober living place, that they tried to be able to force me to be able to go and do daily Christian devotionals.
Mm.
And like that was a portion of at least a lot of places end up having that as a requirement of staying inside of their spaces, is not just that, but having to do work around the spaces. Like they're getting free work from people who are homeless,
Mm-hmm.
who are unhoused. And there's no benefit to it. There's no acknowledging that you're getting a free service for either cleaning or cooking or whatever you're doing for that location, to being able to go and do stuff within that. And then it presupposes that the majority of people there are able-bodied,
Right.
which a very high percentage of unhoused individuals are disabled, whether it's mental, developmental, or motor, or psychiatric disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's there's so many different things to talk about, especially with shelter spaces. Um, but the larger thing, especially with the disability advocacy within homelessness and within homeless shelters, is a lot of places that are again not connected to a COC are not required to be able to meet ADA standards.
Wow.
And there's a lot wrong with ADA standards. There's a lot wrong with
Sure.
ADA standards. It's a good starting spot. But a good chunk of shelters throughout the United States don't even have the bare minimum.
And the ADA doesn't require. Is it just, are they violating the ADA, or is it just that the ADA doesn't require it because they're not like a quote place of business or something?
Churches are churches, places of worship, any faith-based place can be, and in many instances are not required to be ADA compliant.
Wow. I mean, you learn something new every
So
day,
a
but
lot of these
sometimes you don't
places,
wanna.
so so a lot of these places that are run by churches and through churches and that use their 501c3 status do not have to be ADA compliant.
That's terrible. Yeah, that's just
Yes.
awful.
Um,
Uh,
um, yeah, it is. It, it is.
I mean, you'd
The
think of
thing that
that they would have that. I mean, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make. They always. I guess they always make exceptions for who they want to make exceptions to. But one would it would seem to be relatively not that hard of a stretch to understand that the more if you have a disability or other issues that you're dealing with, it probably makes you more likely to not be able to keep a job, and then not be able to keep your house, and then you're more likely to become unhoused. So you're going to get more people in there than normal than you might see in the general population, and now they're saying nope, you can't. So that's amazingly just dumb, for lack of a better word.
so the statistic of people who are unhoused um and even unsheltered with a disability 25% of the disabled community is either unsafely sheltered, um, unhoused, or completely unsheltered.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's just like I don't know where to jump off from that, just simply because that's just a sobering thought in and of itself. That's just something that you'd think that they'd have a handle on, but clearly they don't. And or maybe some places do, but
No.
other places may very well have you know either ulterior motives for what they're doing, or I don't know. Sometimes I assume bad faith when maybe I shouldn't, but it's if you're going to be like the Red
I
Bucket
think
Brigade, if you're going to be like the Red Bucket Brigade, and you're going to try and claim we're going to be charitable, but only to the people we like, then you're not being charitable.
uh, yeah, yeah. Um, um, oh, I have some stories from like myself as well as other people who have ended up having to go and deal with these sorts of things. And I mean, I could go on for hours about some of the things that end up happening. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to. Um, because one of the things that like right now that I'm applying to and that I'm hoping to be able to do is the National Alliance to End Homelessness actually has a grant program that I've applied to, where they end up giving out up to $25,000 per individual of
Mm-hmm.
lived experience of homelessness to be able to go and pursue professional goals. And I'm hoping to be able to actually apply for that. I've started to be able to put a whole thing together. I'm about 95% done with my pitch deck. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea that I've had is just simply to be able to get back into community and engage with people before things start to be able to fall apart. And secondarily, with the things that end up happening, um, you know how everybody loves food trucks,
Right.
um, and how everybody loves like the pop-up mobile boutiques and stuff that you can find in like travel trailers. Um, my idea is to be able to actually go and create a mobile human services bus for people to be able to come on location so that individuals who need assistance, um, just simply doing laundry or simply having a place to take a shower or somewhere to get clean clothing and food that is non-perishable is just right there. It can come
Mm-hmm.
into the areas of greatest need, because I've already started identifying places in Western Pennsylvania that need it between rural areas and places inside of the larger cities here within the 20 county regions. And like right now, I'm focusing in on getting a program done for Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is at, Westmoreland County, and then Washington County. And so far everybody that I've talked to has been really enthusiastic about it and has
Mm-hmm.
been really happy with what I've been talking about because there is a lack of services.
Right.
Um, Places are not having enough things to be able to address these issues. And like having a new idea to be able to address ways of ending homelessness or assisting before homelessness becomes an issue, I think
Mm-hmm.
is a really great idea because too many times there's too many hoops for people to be able to jump through before they're connected to goods and services. And something as simple as a hot shower, clean clothing, some really good comfortable socks and a small little meal being sent to you is a lifesaver.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not having to be able to expend all of your energy on things that you don't need to be able to do. Have somebody else do it for you.
Right. But
So,
by the way, Aaron from our Dirty Dan streams and Mod here too says hello. Also
hi,
Kimchi.
Aaron.
Kimchi says hi, Danimals and Genius Libs. Hi, Liberal Dan. Hi, Ari. Thanks for your work. So, there are people in the chat are definitely being appreciative of the stuff that you're doing, and I'm sure once you get that off the ground and or starting to look for the funding phase or whatever help, if you need help from the Danimals, I'd be more than happy to share the link in chat whenever that comes up and be like, hey, this we had on a while back, here's the link to help him out in getting the more work done, and how you could spread the word about it as well. So now, on top of the disability
Yeah.
issues dealing with trans advocacy, even with trans advocacy, there's I'm sure you've dealt with plenty of other issues with trans advocacy as well. Can you tell us some about those additional stuff, or I mean, I'm sure you can go on and on and on.
How long or short do you want me to go? Like,
Go. Hey,
holy
you
cow!
can
Like,
just start, and if it's too long, well, it's too long. But start. We'll go from there.
oh, congratulations!
Mazel tov to me.
Oh, um, Mazel tov. Definitely. So, congratulations.
Yes.
Uh, oh man. So for me, it started. I started my social transition about 10, actually more than like almost like 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I started to be able to do this, and I can tell you one of the things that I wish that I would have had when I was younger, when I was first coming out, when I was talking about my gender identity, was the ease of use that we have now for some of these different gender clinics.
Mm-hmm.
Because each state, and sometimes even like the four commonwealths that we have here in the United States, um, each area can be different as to how it ends up applying the necessities of trans care. And I wish that they would actually follow WPATH.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, the world, the world, um, I'll remember the acronym for it later, but they are the ones who end up setting the standards of care for transgender healthcare. um, they end up having a whole huge list and ways of being able to do trans care for youth, of having trans care for adults, um, newer identities coming out, and just the standards of practice that medical professionals need to be able to take.
Mm-hmm.
And it simply starts at the very, very beginning of a person walking into a doctor's office, and the simple decision as to how to be able to simply construct a patient form. And there are so many newer ways now with the technology that we have to be able to make registration forms actually include everybody, and not just what they want to see, but actually be inclusive of people's identities, sex assigned at birth. Um, just the simplest ways of data gathering could help to be able to really change the ways that we end up seeing, my community, and see the ways that we end up treating trans people. Um, there was a group that I belonged to down in New Orleans called Title, and we did advocacy and continuing education for health and allied health locations. We did one for Tulane. We had people from Turo coming in. We had Delgado Community College do stuff from us. We had Planned Parenthood. We had people from auctioneers come in to take our courses, just to be able to learn that maybe you shouldn't have people check just one box between a binary gender.
Right.
Um, so it starts really simple. Um, and building upon that, like when I first started stuff for my transition, I had to wait to be able to get onto a wait list to see a therapist who would see me for a minimum of a year before allowing me to be able to then apply to the gender clinic that would then do me and have that therapy for another year before I could actually end up getting onto testosterone.
Hmm.
And mine wasn't 2 years. Mine wasn't 2 years. I waited between waiting for a doctor who actually could take on my case for therapy.
Right.
That was a year. Um, and then the therapist that I went to, um, because the area that I was in was requiring that they go longer. Um, that was 2 years that I was in therapy. Um, and then it was another year wait list for the genders clinic. And then the genders clinic, I had to be able to go and do stuff with their psychiatrist for another year. So that was 5 years. And then I had to be on a wait list to get with a physician to be able to go and prescribe me the medication for testosterone. And by that period of time, I was leaving. I
Ah,
was leaving to get back to New Orleans again.
yeah. That's, I mean, and a lot of times conservatives will mock, gender affirming care or whatever. But when a cis guy goes to the doctor and has low T and he gets testosterone treatments, that's gender affirming care. When Elon Musk get his hair plugs or whatever he got in his hair to make his hairline less receding and to make him what he thought would look better, that's gender affirming care. So the fact gender affirming care takes place in all shapes and sizes. They were attacking some clinic, I think in North Carolina a while back, because the clinic treated children or whatever. But the treatment for children was like, if there was like an injury to that area down there, they would help treat that, because so it would be repaired, because that's gender affirming care, even if they're cisgendered and just need to have a procedure done to make them work properly.
Well, it's like with gonadotropins, with puberty blockers. Um, they were first and predominantly and primarily used for cisgender children,
Hmm.
for precocious puberty. We've had them around for over 40 years now. I think it's going on like 41 or 42 years now.
Right.
Since they ended up actually creating and using gonadotropins for cisgender kids who had puberty sometimes as young as 6 years old.
Right.
And so using that to be able to prevent their puberty until it was actually properly timed to be able to take it, because like the phases that a kid has to go through adolescence into puberty, into teenager, into to the teenage years. It's
Hmm.
not something that's taken lightly. It never has been, and it never will be. And that's even the same standards of practice that we end up having and using for cisgender children to be able to make sure that that medication is actually applicable. Like
Right.
there's been multiple studies on the efficacy of it, of the safety of it. Um, but once we ended up going off brand
Hmm. Right.
for it and using it for trans kids is when everybody started to be able to have issues. And it's just, I would have killed, I would have, not literally, I would have died
Hmm.
a virtual little tiny death to be able to have access to to puberty blockers as a kid. I would have been through the roof.
Right.
But um yeah, it's the medications. those medications being questioned and potentially taken away are not, and this is a thing that I think people need to take into consideration and to really think about. Because if they take those away for kids who are transgender, the difficulty that people are going to have getting those medications for cisgender individuals, whether adults or minors or kids, is going to become considerably more difficult. And we've seen this time again because we've seen places that have pulled medications wrongfully after getting pressured by organizations or getting pressured by the American government to be able to go and do things as simple as um, redoing a box for the EpiPens.
Mm-hmm.
Or, right now there's the issue with the testosterone patches. They ended up pulling all of the testosterone patches for everybody, not just trans individuals, based off of one non-statistically significant study.
Yeah, I've been doing some research on that. I did, yeah. All the trans patches are gone. It's just, again, yeah, because of issues that people. I mean, we even do this on non-issues relating to gender. I mean, we have, or at least gender affirming care. In Louisiana, they made misoprostol a class D scheduled drug, making it, harder for people to get in, when they're, if they're after they've delivered, and they, normally they'll give
Hemorrhage.
misoprostol, yeah, to stop hemorrhaging. And guess what? Now it's harder to get. So they're putting people who are not seeking abortions, who just need the care to deal with after they deliver their child, and now it's being made even harder to get, because they always push things to the too far extreme, and get these consequences that they don't, they never think of, but they don't care, and they don't care to fix it either.
Well, it always surprises people. I was raised culturally pro-life.
Mm,
Um, but my version of culturally pro-life was like, I didn't believe in war. I'm a pacifist.
mm,
Um, I don't I don't believe in um um I don't believe in the death penalty. I'm still a little on the fence with, you know, with assisted suicide. I wouldn't do it myself.
mm,
Um, I'm a little wary of it because slippery slope.
right.
Um, I'm not too sure on it yet. I need a little bit more data before coming to a really good conclusion on it. But for me, my version of how I explain being culturally pro-life is that um 72% of people who obtain abortions are for economic reasons. They're just the poverty rate within that is really high.
Mm,
And another statistic is um comprehensive sex education ends up preventing unwanted teen pregnancies.
right.
It's been shown time and time and time again, and yet they don't want to be able to have access to that.
Right. Well, if you
Um,
if you teach kids how to use or that you can use condoms, that to them that's permission to have sex and use condoms. I'm like, no, it's just giving people knowledge doesn't mean they're necessarily going to use it. A
yes,
lot of people need more knowledge, and I would hope they would use it, but no, educate people how to protect themselves, and they would be more likely to protect themselves. Provide the tools to protect themselves, it's even better. Talked about this on the podcast before. In if you want to punish abortions, elect conservatives. If you want to stop abortions, elect people on the left,
Democrats.
because you have in Florida you had Jeb Bush, who was the governor back then, and he defunded Planned Parenthood, which meant, and certain clinics in rural areas had to shut down, which made it less likely that people would get preventive care, and as such, more people ended up getting abortions during the rest of his tenure as governor. Meanwhile, John Hickenlooper, when he was governor of Florida, not Florida, of Colorado, John Hickenlooper implemented
I was about to
universal
say,
access to everything, like to like birth control pills, IUD, etc., to enable people to get it above and beyond what the Affordable Care Act provided. Because if you didn't have
Yep.
insurance, it would not necessarily be free. But he was basically saying it'll be free for everybody in our state, and teen unwanted pregnancy rates dropped, which means abortions dropped. So real solutions require, real fixes, not, you know, ferrying things away and hiding them so that, you don't have to see it.
Well, it's like the statistic that I've been following right now is that since the Supreme Court case for Dobbs on that whole thing with Roe versus Wade, um, there has been a I don't want to say that it's an order of a magnitude higher now, but it's at least potentially an order higher of now um infant mortality. The infant mortality rate has risen drastically.
Mm-hmm.
And like the particularly high death of infants and newborn children is directly related to that because like as a thing for kids who or children who are stillborn or children who are having fetal abnormalities or having issues of things like um, um, issues with gestational diabetes or any of these different issues is starting to be able to not just a small amount, but ended up sending up, infant mortality rates like even higher here in the United States. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to think about how it is with, I don't even want to think how it is with like people of color who end up giving birth because like they have a high enough, mortality rate to be able to begin with.
Right.
And like like going back to this thing to where trying to ban stuff like this, it just doesn't work. Like I I hope this isn't the case, but heck, if we have to starting another Dallas Buyers Club,
Mm. Right.
have you seen that one
I think I
or
think
read it?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it, so I understand the reference. Yes.
For all y'all out there who do not know, if you do not know what the Dallas Buyers Club was, um, watch it
Mm.
or read it or both.
Yes.
I highly recommend it. It is very good.
So just in chat,
Um,
Steve, who happens to live across the pond, says, "Just want to say thanks to Ari for bringing to attention 100 little things I would not have even thought about, like most people, I guess." So, you're being appreciated in the chat. So just wanted to let you know that.
awesome sauce. I do try. There are so many things that people do not like quite realize about stuff, and I am first and foremost an educator. I'm always one of those people that ends up. I enjoy teaching individuals. Oh, geez, how Jewish of me.
Oh,
Learning, teaching. Uh,
yes. What you gonna
boy,
do? So anyway,
good luck in the castle.
yes. Do you is there anything that you like? I mean, if there's any, again, once the you know the program you're trying to get started, once that has links available, obviously I'll be happy to share them
Mhm.
on all my social media and live during the stream. Remind people, hey, remember when Ari's on the show? Here's the link to help them out. Do you want to say anything else before we wrap this part of the show up?
Uh, uh, no, uh, he's just mostly dead.
Nice. Okay. Well, again, look, and
What,
again,
what do you,
everybody.
what do you, what do you, what do you do when he's all dead?
Right.
Pick his pockets and look for loose
Yes.
change.
Yes. Uh,
Because
brain
that's what
fart.
it's
But
all
yes.
about. It's all
Yes.
about change. It's all about
Yes.
change.
Yes. Change
Things
you're
are going to
believing.
change.
Even the change from your
Yes.
pockets, which we might have to hold on to a lot tighter now, with tariffs and everything.
Oh, with $8 cartons of eggs.
Yes. because you thought prices were coming down next year. Nope, not at all. Anyway, so again, thank you, Ari, for being on the show. You're more than welcome to come back
Inconceivable.
anytime to discuss anything you want to discuss. I appreciate you, and of course, if anybody has any other um, questions, there haven't really been any questions in chat, just kind of people more being thankful of you being on the show. But I mean, you're typically there with me on Tuesday nights on Nerdy Dan, and be more than happy
I
to
am typically.
yeah, I'm more than happy to. I'm sure we could, whilst we're playing, we could also discuss anything else and answer any questions y'all might have as well. So again, open invitation to come back on the show whenever you want. Appreciate you, Ari, as always, and you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Thank you so
All right,
much, Dan. It was a
bye
pleasure
bye.
talking.
My pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much. Anyway, so that was Ari Gabrek on our show. Again, we will share links when they become available to help him out with the advocacy and anything else that he's going to be working on. And the afterwards, let's see. I'm trying to just leave that as well. But anyway, thank you all for participating, for listening. It was a very good conversation, I think. Definitely one that maybe should definitely be had over the Thanksgiving, because we have Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. We have lots of people who need help that do not get the help that they need, especially during the holidays. And so if we can think of ways to get together and help our fellow human beings out, especially with what's coming to this country over the next 4 years, we definitely need to think of ways to handle all that. I did want to shout out, thank you to Chad. I don't know if you're still around, Chad. You didn't tag automatically, but Chad gave a $20 super chat. Appreciate you for that. Appreciate anybody who supports the show, be it gifting memberships, subscriptions, or just commenting on the show, helping the algorithms out, everything like that. So, Steve, the wheelchair slope thing, of course, someone has to be able to climb it themselves. Never even remotely came into my mind. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't agree with you that you're an idiot, Steve. I just believe that, sometimes when people don't have lived experiences, they often don't think about such things. And as such, sometimes it requires other people talking about their lived experiences to make sure that people can get the help and the assistance that they need, because that's what equity is all about. Conservatives will mock equity as part of DEI initiatives, and equity is not about equal results, but it's giving people the tools that they need to be able to help them get the job done or get whatever it is that they need, based on their certain circumstances that are in play. See, Jolie is in the chat. Hey, Jolie. Sorry I didn't say hello earlier. Everyone say hi. Big Hook, Jeff, Krista. Let's see. Anybody else I might have missed? Appreciate y'all for participating, for coming in the chat. Evie Zant over on Twitch. Thank you as well for coming on from a similar neck of the woods that I was originally from. Evie Zant is from around North Wilmington. Sure, I used to get off when we would go to my grandparents' house all the time, visiting from Baltimore. Exit 5 on 5 North on Route 141 is the exit that we would take off of Interstate 95 to get towards get more towards my grandparents, like Barley Mill Drive areas where kind of where they lived. And in reality, one of the funniest things is that we kind of never even realized until after the fact, but when President Biden or Vice President Biden, whatever, had Secret Service individuals guarding the house, wherever he lived, which is kind of around the corner, maybe about 5 minutes at most away from where my grandparents lived, that the Secret Service would stage right across the street from my grandparents' house. So I guess in the very same neighborhood, I suppose, right? Let's see. Jeff Curry, I've been wondering why how's the submarine use nuclear power, heating water spinning turbines, right? Isn't that how it works? Let's see. Say how it's the perfect platform for nuclear power, unlimited power. Basically, all it needs is water to cool off. The electricity produces will split water to oxygen to breathe and hydrogen. That's pretty cool. A nuclear power plant near here has lots of smoke coming out. Is that just steam? It probably is just steam, most likely, because again, you have to cool what's going on, and then the electricity spins the turbines and stuff like that. That's a lot of times how we get the power that we get. Might not be a perfect explanation, but I'm not a nuclear physicist, so sue me. Let's see. It's kind of scrolling back up into the chat. Again, I do apologize for the issues with the stream. I had changed. I did look up what the stream settings should be for streaming to YouTube. Unfortunately, it said to increase the bit rate or to increase the kilobits per second when it comes to the streaming, and then also there's the other part of the settings, the other settings that we have. Let's see, what did I set the settings to? I don't know if it's even gonna let me open it because I'm currently live stream. There we are. So yeah, the video frames per second. I switched from 60 to 30 for this because they said that for a talk show type setting, 30 frames per second should be enough and 60 might be too much. Apparently that didn't fix the issues whatsoever. And stream wise, we're at about 11,000, 10,000 kilobits per second, but we also were at much fewer kilobits per second earlier on in the show when we were seeing some major issues, so to speak. But we're going to get the solution may very well be that eventually, maybe it's just the fact that I need a new laptop, because this laptop is ancient, and some of the streaming issues can happen as a memory issue on the laptop and not necessarily on the stream. But that's not happening until we at least sell my mother-in-law's house, which still isn't done yet, and or also sell the property up on the North Shore that we need to get sold as well, which requires a lot of other jumping through hoops because my wife needs to go get power of attorney from her aunt and uncle so she can handle everything as it pertains to it. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. But it is what it is. I was stressing a little bit more on yesterday's podcast than I was today. Yesterday's stream, I guess, on nerdydan.com, of all of the things that I'm worried about, and I'm trying not to worry about them as much as I guess I should, or as I am, but, there's a lot of dread coming on, and not just national dread, but I have individual dread issues as well. Let's see, Jeff Curry, I was thinking I would not want to be underwater with a nuclear reactor. Hell, I know people I'm scared to be on a boat with. Nice. Let's see, the water tower's pouring over radiators to recondense the water into the closed loop. Yep, there you go. So, anywho, stuff in the news today. I read the news today, oh boy. Trump is saying supposedly that Mexico will stop the flow of migrants after speaking with Mexican president following tariff threats. I don't believe him one bit. Of course, he'll say that it's true, and his followers will believe it's true, but until the president of Mexico says it's true, I ain't believing crap that comes out of Trump's mouth as it pertains to Mexico things. Of course, Canada is examining tariffs on certain U.S. items following Trump's tariff threat. We have the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire, which ceasefires always are weird to me, because if you sign a ceasefire, like, why wouldn't you just stop the shelling and shooting and everything right when you sign it? Like, we're signing a ceasefire. It's going into effect tomorrow. So they keep fighting over the course of the next day, getting in, I guess, their last shots in at each other. They're like, oh, 5 o'clock, time for the ceasefire. Let's go back to the drawing board and see what else we can do that's terrible. So, of course, now that the ceasefire was signed and now is implemented and now has taken effect, that gives the Israeli military more ability to focus their attacks on Gaza, which is going to harm more people living in Gaza who had nothing to do with the 10/7 attacks, which is just exacerbating the problem and will create more terrorists. It'll create more sympathy, warranted sympathy for the people in Gaza who are not part of Hamas, and unwarranted sympathy for the people in Gaza who are part of Hamas. I guess that's the best way to put it. Let's see what else. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Probably we got the Trump transition team saying that several cabinet picks have been targeted with threats, either threats of violence or swatting. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene says she's been swatted several times, but I don't think has provided any evidence over her being swatted several times. I wish maybe somebody should be swatting Marjorie Taylor Greene down anyway. Jeff, where does one find uranium? In Uranus! Sorry. Have you checked your butthole? Sorry. Trump's advanced transition team said several President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet administrative parties targeted violence on American lives and those who live them. For safety, those who are supposedly good. Carolina, who was Trump's press secretary, in a statement, President Trump and the attorney are grateful for their swift action. So grateful for the federal government now, but not back then. Not during the election, because if they're protecting you now, right? Now they're okay. Now they're hunky dory, but not before. You're President has been White House has entitled federal law and elects team and continues to monitor the situation closely. Federal law enforcement's response along that state and local officials remains on. The spokesman said, federal law enforcement said none of those targeted protect keys by the U.S. Civil Secret Service. Andrew McCain, former FBI director at CNN, contributed that he was not surprised by the threats. This has become a very common aspect of life for anybody who is a high-profile thing. Of course, again, I'll believe it when it's reported from the law enforcement. I'm not necessarily going to believe it when coming from Trump's team because, again, when Donald Trump is lying, his lips are moving. Because conservative politicians and many conservative, voters don't seem to understand the moral of the story of the boy who cried wolf. Which is, if you lie so many times, the real moral of the story, the more you lie, the less likely the people are going to believe you the next time. Of course, the moral of the story that the conservatives learned is if somebody lies, keep believing them because they might eventually damn spot, right? Anyway, I don't know what there is left for me to do downstairs when it comes to preparing for tomorrow's meals, but I'm still feeling a little bit tired and worn out, everything like that. So, obviously, nothing's probably, unless something big happens, I probably won't be streaming all over the weekend. I mean, usually when I go live, it's when something big happens. So unless something big happens, I'll be away from Liberal Dan Radio for a lot of it. Again, but if something happens, I'll post a note on YouTube, onto Blue Sky, Facebook, etc., saying that there's going to be a special episode dealing with whatever it is that might come up if something does come up. Starting from Monday, the new intro, the post-election intro that I ran, we won't be doing that intro from Monday through Christmas. Why? Because that's my the war on Christmas intro is what we play here on Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left. That's right. The video for this is also up on Liberal Dan Radio .com as well on the YouTube channel, so you can, if you find it, you can see it. But otherwise, you can wait till Monday, and we'll start. Excuse me, doing that as the intro through Christmas. Even though I'm Jewish, I like the more on Christmas intro. Anywho, so let's go ahead and call this episode an end. I want everybody just, there are some very imperialistic and genocidal historical facts as it pertains to Thanksgiving, so a lot of people don't celebrate that simply because of the fact that, you don't want to celebrate genocide. There was a great picture of all the Disney princesses at a Thanksgiving dinner, and Pocahontas just looking off to the side disgusted, which is hilarious, but it's funny because it's true. But regardless of the fact, we have created this day where a lot of people get off, a lot of people take off and spend time with their family. So if you haven't lost family because of, MAGA or before, and you're looking forward to spending time with your family and being thankful for being able to be with your family, I do not begrudge that at all. And, I hope everybody has a good, safe, healthy, and happy Thanksgiving weekend. And, until Monday, we'll see you then with more Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right. And again, you can also find me, Liberal Dan Radio, Blue Sky, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, all Liberal Dan Radio. Threads as well, I think also on Instagram, but I hardly ever use that anyway. But until next time, this is Dan Zimmerman with Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right.